It is November 12th, 2025, and as Israel continues to violate the ceasefire agreement it's supposed to have with Hezbollah, the chief of Hezbollah is not staying silent, speaking out this week and noting that the ongoing violations by Israel cannot continue. So, are we gearing up for the next phase of war between Israel and Hezbollah? And what should we be keeping an eye on when it comes to the Gaza Strip, another region where Israel is supposed to be respecting a ceasefire deal and is doing the exact opposite? And all of that comes as you have the new quote unquote interim president of Syria, who was never elected, in the White House this week, meeting with Trump, as you have the US wanting to get even more involved in Syria, in Gaza, and of course in Lebanon. But what does that really mean, and what should we be keeping an eye on? Well, we got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Laith Marouf, a Palestinian Syrian journalist and executive director of Free Palestine TV based in Lebanon. Laith, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Good to be with you, Rachel.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. Now, I want to get your take on the latest here because I know that we heard from Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem this week, and he said that Israel's routine violations of the ceasefire with near daily strikes in southern Lebanon cannot continue. He noted that everything has a limit, and he also called out the U.S. for putting pressure on the Lebanese government to make concessions without any reciprocal commitments or guarantees and wanting to give Israel free rein. I think that pretty much sums up US policy when it comes to Israel. So, how do you see this statement and the position that Hezbollah is currently in?
Well, clearly, over the last few months, we heard the United States attempt to pressure the Lebanese military to face off with the Lebanese people. In the words of Trump's envoy, Thomas Barak, he wanted the Lebanese military to kill its own people. And having that come out publicly and the attempt by the puppet prime minister Nawaf Salam to deliver on those dictates backfired. We saw the Lebanese military refusing to follow up on these orders from the prime minister. And we had the president of Lebanon, who used to be the secretary, the chief of staff of the military, President Joseph Aoun, also saying, ordering the military to actually face off with the Israelis whenever they enter Lebanese territories. So the attempt by the US to use the military against Hezbollah now has backfired, and actually the military is aligned with Hezbollah, and so is the president. So the Hezb now can speak to the public in a much more comfortable language, doesn't have to hide its intentions, is saying that it will be defending the country, that there will be no new negotiations with the Zionists, given that the treaty or ceasefire agreement that was signed was never respected. So they will not be negotiating any new treaty until at least this ceasefire agreement is implemented by the enemy, the Zionists. And so I think all of this indicates that we will be seeing a return to a full military confrontation. The Zionists and the Americans behind them cannot achieve any of their goals without the use of military force, and they cannot find any regional or local parties that will implement their aims through military force. Therefore, it's very logical to expect that there will be a return to hostilities between Hezbollah and the Zionists.
Yeah, I can imagine at this point. I mean, as you were noting, right, the Zionists have never respected the ceasefire deal to begin with. But on top of that, and I do think it's interesting the way that the Trump administration, they come up with this idea that, oh, Hezbollah needs to disarm. How are you going to make that happen? And then they seem to be putting all of the pressure on the Lebanese government. Like, if they could have done that, they probably would have done that a long time ago, if that were even possible. And then you see the US sending a delegation to Beirut Beirut on Monday to push Lebanese officials to crack down on the flow of funding to Hezbollah before next year's parliamentary elections. So, when it comes to that US meddling and kind of how far the US is willing to get involved here and to put the quote unquote pressure, as you're also pointing out that it's not working for the Lebanese military, how far do you see the US being willing to get into this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the issue of the finances, because the Americans are right now concentrating on attempting to ban the good or blessed debt. Al-Qard al-Hassan, it's a co-op kind of bank that Hezbollah runs, where it loans people money at zero interest rate. It helps, in costs of building homes, first homes, and marriages, and all of these things. So a lot of the working class, including the non-Shia, are in putting their savings and the gold or whatever they have at home in the Qard al-Hassan, and receiving these zero interest loans that are keeping the country afloat. Part of what the West wants to do is impoverish everybody, to make it that you have no ability to resist, even bodily wise, or while you're looking for food, it's harder to resist. So this is not really about flow of money to Hezbollah. This is about impoverishing the population, and where it cannot find any social services or help from anybody, since the state in Lebanon doesn't exist and doesn't provide these social services. So in the next few weeks, we will also see this pressure increase. We may see the puppet head of the central bank attempt to ban Al-Qard al-Hassan just to appease the Americans. This is not going to pass, I think, easily in the country. Al-Qard al-Hassan will continue to operate whether the central bank attempts to shut them down or not. As for build up towards war, there is a possibility for this to happen with or without American approval or timing, because the American military is very busy right now attempting to invade Venezuela. It cannot be directly involved in a war against Lebanon or Hezbollah if the Israelis instigate it. But the statements of Naim al-Qassem and the increase in intensity of attacks in South Lebanon over the last week indicate that there will be a war. I don't know how much propaganda preparation there will be in the populations in the West before it is triggered, but usually there is at least increase in media articles talking about the bad guy that is going to be attacked. And we haven't seen that yet in the Western media.
Yeah, and that's really interesting how the US has all of these different conflicts, right? And it, like with Venezuela, they're adding one more, and you're looking at them and going, okay, how are you going to juggle all of these? And when it comes to Israel's handling of literally anything, they always cry to Washington, right? They get involved in something, they attack Iran, and then it's like, oh, we got to get the US here to back us up here. So when it comes to Hezbollah versus Israel, how do you see what Israel is possibly preparing or getting ready to, or thinking that they're getting ready to get into when it comes to the next phase of war against Hezbollah?
Yeah, given that there's no local vassal or mercenary group that will do the dirty job for the Zionists, they were going to have to do it themselves. The attempted invasion of South Lebanon, both in 2006 and 2003, 23, 24, led to huge losses for the Zionists, and they were unable to occupy any of the territory of South Lebanon in those attempts. This time, if the Zionists attempt to invade South Lebanon, all the frontline villages are leveled to the ground. So all Hezbollah needs to do is just carpet bomb those villages as the Zionists advance. So it's not a sound military strategy to do so. Looking at the map, we can see from the southeast side of Lebanon, the Zionists occupying much of the border almost up to Damascus on the Syrian side. and there is a possibility that they may descend from the middle of Lebanon, basically, down to the Bekaa Valley without having to go through South Lebanon, because that is impossible for them. Yeah, but even this strategy of descending from the Golan Heights to the Bekaa Valley and skipping the south of Lebanon was attempted in the 1982 war, when the Zionists were advancing towards Beirut, and they thought they can occupy half of the country if they do this. And in that battle, it is remembered until now as the largest tank battle since the end of World War II. The Syrian military at the time defended with the resistance in that location. There will be no Syrian military to this time defending, but for sure, Hezbollah is ready in those locations, and I think the Zionists will also face a defeat if they attempt to do this. So these are the only possibilities for land invasion by the Zionists. They can bombard from air relentlessly, as they've always done, and take the Gaza strategy or the Dahiya strategy before that and bombard civilian infrastructure and buildings. But that's all they can do. They can genocide. They cannot win an actual war.
Yeah, and we've seen that very, very clearly over the last few years. And now, speaking of genocide and the one that is still ongoing in Gaza, I wanted to get into that a little bit because obviously there's supposed to be a ceasefire agreement there. Israel violates it whenever they want, they keep killing more Palestinians. And now we have reports coming from Israeli media that the US is planning to build a $500 million military base in Israel on the Gaza border, following the establishment of a military outpost in southern Israel to quote unquote oversee the ceasefire. And I guess they're not doing too well because Israel continues to violate it. But what do you make of the current situation in Gaza, and what are your concerns about the US trying to get more and more involved there?
I mean, look, some of these things on the face of it seem like a big change. But in reality, the American military, with its generals, have been sitting in the command centers controlling this war since the beginning, since they won, especially because the Zionists lost their top 12 generals on October 7th when the resistance occupied those 12 bases on the borders of Gaza. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there always has been Navy SEALs and American Special Forces on the ground fighting inside Gaza, above and beyond all the mercenary, troops that have been also fighting there, and all the Western Special Forces, Canadian Special Forces, so forth. So building a base is not going to change anything in terms of the outcome of the battle. The West used all it can as an empire to defend the Zionist colony and to fight this war in Gaza, and they haven't been able to defeat the Palestinian resistance. So what does this mean? It just is more open about the activities of American occupation forces in Palestine. They're not going to hide it anymore. And would it change anything in the outcome of the battle? No, it's not. So will it actually limit the activities of the Zionists, as they're going to be monitoring the ceasefire? Really, of course, they're not going to limit the attacks of the Zionists on the Palestinians. The only thing that I could say it could, make a difference in is that it will provide the Palestinian resistance with a clear American target to take out, as happened in 1982 when the Americans finally admitted that they were part of the invasion of Lebanon and built their base, their barracks on the shoreline here of Beirut. And then they became an easy target, and the resistance took them on and blew up the American troop barracks, and 200 plus American soldiers were dead that day. So if there's anything that it's going to change, it's just providing an easy target for the resistance. And if it's clear and everybody understands that the Americans are the occupiers at this point, then they will be a legitimate target, and we'll see a repeat of 1982.
Yeah, very telling. That a good reminder, I think, too, that the U.S. has been involved since the very start. That they are a key part in all of this and a key party to the ongoing genocide. Now, while I have you here, I also want to get into the latest involving what has happened in D.C. this week. As we've talked about what's happened in the Middle East, you look over to the White House and you've got the former leader of Al Qaeda in Syria, Abu Muhammad al Jalani. Welcome to the White House. Now, the former ISIS prodigy is joining the anti Islamic State coalition, they say. So I'm curious, what was your reaction to his visit, and what are the warning signs for Syria? As you know, going back to this theme that we've been covering, the US seems to want to get more and more involved everywhere, and they appear to be doing that with Syria, with reports that they want to now establish an airbase in Damascus.
I'm going to say something that maybe a lot of people are going to disagree with here, but with Al Julani was his finance minister, Al Sharani, and he's actually Al Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, shaved and cleaned with a few tuck and procedures on his face. And I would say also that Osama bin Laden is not dead. Osama bin Laden had plastic surgery and he's walking in Hollywood. All his videos were filmed somewhere in California. These are all actors. They're not even real human beings almost. It is now all in the open, the situation. These are CIA agents, all of Al Qaeda, all of ISIS, all of the Wahhabi death squads, Al Shabaab in Somalia, Boko Haram in Nigeria, that now are being used as an excuse to possibly invade Nigeria. All of these Wahhabi death squads are controlled directly by the CIA and the Mossad and the Saudi intelligence. And seeing this butcher walk in the White House, it felt like he was coming back home. And he's definitely happy and playing basketball as he did in probably his CIA training camp with his handlers before. So there's nothing to me that is shocking. What is shocking, the only thing that's shocking, is all that crowd that was talking about human rights, women's rights, children's rights, freedom of religion, all of that about Syria when it was under President Assad's rule, have just disappeared completely. They don't even mention Syria. Those who sold, this ending that we see today, that called themselves feminist and called themselves, humanist or whatever it is. Even those anarchists that carried arms and went down to northeast Syria to join the Kurdish militias, the Kurdish Contras there, have also disappeared. They don't care about the Kurds anymore, as long as their man is in control of Syria. So pity Syria, pity the Syrian people, after withstanding colonialist power since 1942 and being the first country to escape colonialism after World War II through armed resistance. It falls, and what a fall! It falls to these wolves. Syria is, occupied by the Turks, the Kurds, the Russians, the Americans, the Israelis, and the Wahhabi death squads. What can we say more than that?
Oh, I'm really curious now on the. I need to look more into Al Jalani's finance. Did you say it was his finance minister?
Yeah, he's the guy that was with him. Right now, Syria is going to be indebted also till the end of time. It was a country that had zero debt, international debt, before the war on Syria started. Now it's going to be taking IMF loans and loans from the Saudis and loans from the Qataris and loans from everybody, and it's going to be indebted for till the end of time.
Yeah, very telling when you've got Jelani gets to DC and they're like, oh yeah, we got to drop you off at the IMF headquarters so we can get some of those predatory loans started. Now, I did want to bring up a comment that he made. I thought it was interesting because, of course, part of his tour in DC is he has to make the rounds with the mainstream media. He's got to stop by all of the outlets and give his interviews. And he was specifically asked about the possibility of a deal with Israel. He said that negotiations have been ongoing, but that in order to reach an agreement, Israel should withdraw to their pre-December 8th border. So nothing to do with the illegal occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights. We've forgotten about that now. It's just, oh, let's, withdraw from what they did nearly a year ago. When it comes to this back and forth, because as you were pointing out, look, at the end of the day, Jelani is on Israel's team, the US team, Turkey's team. How do you view these comments? Is it just kind of expected that there kind of already is a deal with Israel and this back and forth here is just for show?
Yeah, there's definitely a deal, and his job is to create so many schisms within Syrian society that it cannot be glued back together. That's his job. So he has no intention of creating a stable state. He has no intention of providing services, no intention of pushing any of the occupations out. He wants to increase the schisms within the society, and he will disappear as soon as that job is delivered on. One of the meetings that he did in the United States is with all the Zionist leadership, AIPAC, and some of the Jewish Syrians that betrayed Syria in the 1970s and worked with the Zionists, who by the way, he's been letting them into Syria. There's full Israelis walking in the Damascus old city and filming themselves doing tourism videos, and Syrians kind of go back to their own country. So this is, just for show, just to show that he's somehow still wants some return of the land. The Zionist forces walk into villages that HTS forces control right now and parade in the villages and walk out with nobody firing anything at them or stopping in their way even. So you could see, Israeli soldiers having lunch at the outskirts of Damascus with HTS fighters in the streets right beside them. There's no enmity there. There's symbiosis. These are both parasitic entities, the Zionists and the Wahhabis, and they want to break up the society. He will not be defending not only Al-Julan that is occupied, where the intelligence services decided to give him that name so he can look like he's going to liberate the Golan Heights, but he's not going to work to liberate anything in the country.
Yeah, those 5 years spent in U.S. custody and all those meetings with David Petraeus, I guess they're really paying off now as we're seeing it kind of all come together. And it is all being thrown in the faces of the American people, right? They're literally telling you we're not hiding it anymore. As you were noting, it's now all out in the open, and it's up to the public to decide what they want to do with that information and whether they want to continue to be complacent about it. Certainly a lot at stake here all around, and I always appreciate you taking the time to join me to break down all of the latest here. Laith Marouf, a Palestinian Syrian journalist and executive director of Free Palestine TV. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
See you soon.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/RachelBlevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.